By the time evening comes, most people have looked after everything except the two hands that carried the whole day. They cooked, cleaned, gripped, lifted, washed, opened, scrubbed, folded, drove, typed, pulled, twisted, carried bags, held tools, wrung cloth, buttoned shirts, opened jars, steadied children, wiped counters, and did 100 small jobs nobody even notices, until the skin starts to split and the fingers begin to feel stiff. And then, at the end of all that, a person stands at the sink, looks down at their own hands, and sees the truth plain as day. The knuckles look chalky, the skin feels tight, there are little dry lines where there should not be lines at all. The sides of the fingers catch on fabric. The thumb has that one sore place that seems to reopen every time it almost heals. The palm feels rough, the cuticles look tired, and when the weather turns or the work gets heavy, even closing the hand can feel different than it should. That is the moment most people reach for whatever pretty bottle is closest. A little cream, a little perfume, a label full of words, a promise of softness. And an hour later, it is as if nothing much happened. Now listen carefully, because this is where so many people get misled. When hands are rough, dry, overworked, and beginning to crack, most folks try to cover the problem before they have prepared the skin for what comes next. They put something soft over something still dirty, still rough, still loaded with dead skin, and then wonder why nothing seems to last. But there is an old kitchen cupboard method people have quietly used for generations that follows a much simpler kind of sense. First, you loosen and lift what is sitting on the skin. Then, once the skin is ready, you seal in what it has been missing. That is where baking soda and castor oil come in. And no, I am not going to tell you a fairy tale. I am not going to call this a miracle. I am not going to pretend this is some hidden cure the world is desperate to keep from you. This is not medicine. I am not your doctor. And if your hands are painful in a way that worries you, if the cracking is severe, if there is swelling, redness, numbness, or anything that seems beyond ordinary dry, overworked skin, that is a matter for your physician, and in your case, that means Dr. Mike Henson. But if what you are dealing with is the ordinary misery of hard-used hands that feel dry, rough, tight, tired, and neglected, then this old combination makes a lot of plain, practical sense. And once you understand why each part is there, the whole method becomes easy to remember. Most people think the magic, if there is any, must be in the oil. But that is only half the story. The first part, the part people are most likely to skip, is the baking soda. And the reason they skip it is simple. They misunderstand what it is there to do. Baking soda is not in this routine because it sounds impressive. It is not here because of some grand claim. It is here because it is a mild, simple, useful scrub when handled gently. That is all. Hands that work all day gather more than dirt. They gather roughness. They gather a dull layer. They gather flaky, dry skin that ordinary soap does not always shift. They gather buildup around the nails, on the creases, along the thumb, across the heel of the palm, and around those little places that bear the most friction. And when that sits there day after day, whatever you put on top afterward has a harder time doing much good. So the first step is not glamour, it is preparation. You are not attacking the skin. You are not scraping it raw. You are not trying to make the hand red and polished. You are simply helping the surface let go of what no longer needs to be there. That can be done two easy ways. The gentler way is the warm soak. Take a bowl or basin of comfortably warm water. Not hot, warm enough to feel good, not harsh enough to sting. Add a spoonful of baking soda and stir until the water looks a little cloudy. Then place your hands in and let them rest. 5 minutes is enough for many people. 10 minutes can feel lovely after a long day. And this is important to understand. Part of what feels so good in that moment is not some mystery from the powder. It is the warmth itself. Warm water has a way of softening what feels tight. It gives the fingers a chance to unclench. It helps the surface grime and roughness loosen. It turns the end of the day into a pause instead of a collapse. If your hands feel more tired than filthy, more stiff than deeply grimy, this is often the nicer approach. The second way is the quick paste. Wet your hands first. Shake a little baking soda into the palm. Add only enough water to turn it into a loose paste. Then rub your hands together gently, slowly, thoughtfully. Across the knuckles, around the nails, over the dry ridges, across the side of the index finger, into the rough heel of the palm, wherever skin tends to feel thickened, flaky, or dull. Not hard, never hard. This is where people can ruin a good thing by using too much force. Gentle is the whole secret. You are not sanding wood. You are not scrubbing a pan. You are persuading tired old dry skin to let go. That is a very different thing. Rinse afterward with warm water, and even before the oil comes in, many people notice the hands already feel cleaner, smoother, and less burdened somehow. Now let me say the sensible caution right here, because honesty matters more than hype ever will. A little baking soda goes a long way. Used gently, it can be useful. Used aggressively, it can be too much. If skin is already very raw, very open, actively broken, or stinging, do not go rubbing scrub into the worst spots. Use common sense. Skip the scrub where the skin is truly damaged, and if your hands have cracks or irritation that concern you, that is exactly where someone like Dr. Mike Henson should guide you. That kind of caution does not weaken the method, it strengthens trust. Because the truth is always stronger than exaggeration. So now the hands have been prepared. The surface has been softened. The loose, dry layer has been gently worked away. The fingers have had a little warmth. The skin is ready. This is where the castor oil earns its place. And castor oil is not like those featherlight oils that disappear almost before you have finished applying them. It is thicker, richer, heavier, a little tacky almost. And that thickness is not a flaw. That is the reason people keep coming back to it. Thin products can feel pleasant for a few minutes and then vanish. Castor oil stays. It clings. It coats. It lingers where dry skin needs time, not just contact. That matters more than many people realize. Because when skin is dry and beginning to split, quick softness is not enough. You want something that sits with the skin, something that does not simply make it feel wet and then disappear, something that helps reduce that papery, tight feeling and gives those overused areas a long, slow stretch of relief. That is why this pairing works so well in the minds of people who swear by it. The baking soda helps prepare. The castor oil helps remain. And remain is a big word in this story, because lasting comfort almost always beats instant comfort. Here is how many people use it. After the hands have been soaked or gently scrubbed and rinsed, while they are still slightly warm, place a small amount of castor oil onto the fingertips or palm. Not much. You do not need a puddle. This oil spreads farther than most. Rub it between the hands and start working it in slowly. Over the knuckles first, then around the fingers, down near the nails, across the sides that catch and peel, into the thumb crease, into the center of the palm, into the base of the hand where skin often feels thick and forgotten. And when you do this, do not rush. The rubbing itself is part of the ritual. There is something deeply settling about taking even 2 minutes at the end of the day to treat your own hands as if they matter. Because they do. People will spend money on face masks, hair serums, expensive candles, special teas, and all kinds of comfort, while the very hands that carried the whole weight of the day get almost nothing. That makes no sense when you think about it. Your hands serve you from the first task to the last. Money on face masks, hair serums, expensive candles, special teas, and all kinds of comfort, while the very hands that carried the whole weight of the day get almost nothing. That makes no sense when you think about it. Your hands serve you from the first task to the last. They deserve better than a careless swipe of scented lotion 5 seconds before bed. And this is another reason the method feels powerful. It slows a person down enough to notice what they have been neglecting. Now, once the castor oil has been worked in well, there is an old simple trick that changes the whole experience. Cover the hands. Plain cotton gloves are ideal. If you do not have those, a clean, soft pair of cotton socks over the hands can do the same job. And then go to sleep. That sounds almost too simple for people who have been trained to trust only things that come in expensive jars with dramatic claims on the label. But simple does not mean useless. Sometimes simple means it has survived, because it was worth repeating. When the hands are covered overnight, the oil is not getting wiped away immediately on blankets, clothing, or whatever you touch next. It stays close to the skin. It has time. The warmth of the hands stays in. The dryness is not fighting the open air the whole time. And morning often feels different. Not transformed into fantasy, not magically remade, but softer, less tight, less scratchy, less inclined to catch, a little more comfortable to bend, a little less miserable to look at. That kind of improvement is not flashy, which is exactly why many people trust it more. Real comfort often arrives quietly. And there is one more piece to this that people overlook. Sometimes what hurts most is not only dryness, it is the weariness. Hands can feel tired, stiff, overused, almost resentful from the day. For that, some people add a warm cloth. After the oil has been massaged in, take a soft cloth wrung out in comfortably warm water and wrap the hands for a few minutes. Again, let us keep the language honest. Warmth is not a miracle cure. It does not repair every deep problem. It does not replace medical advice. If something feels wrong beyond ordinary strain, then Dr. Mike Henson is the person for that kind of judgment. But for plain end-of-day stiffness, warmth can be a real comfort, and comfort matters. There is a strange habit in the world now where people act as though a thing only matters if it sounds clinical, expensive, or dramatic. But people have always known that comfort is valuable. Warm water is valuable. Gentle rubbing is valuable. Slowing down is valuable. Covering cracked skin overnight is valuable. A routine that helps you feel more human by morning is valuable. Not everything useful has to sound revolutionary. In fact, the most useful things often sound almost boring when explained by someone honest. That is one reason old household methods keep returning no matter how many new products arrive every season with new packaging and new slogans. Because the body still responds to care. And care is older than marketing. Now, there is another layer here that makes this kind of script spread so fast online, and it is not only the remedy itself. It is the feeling behind it. People are tired of being sold things they do not trust. Tired of paying too much for too little. Tired of buying advanced versions of simple ideas that were already sitting in the cupboard all along. Tired of labels that promise everything and deliver a half hour of softness before the same dryness comes creeping back. When someone hears that 2 familiar, inexpensive household items may do more for tired hands than a long list of fancy products, it hits something emotional, not just practical. It feels like reclaiming common sense. It feels like getting a little piece of power back. It feels like remembering that not every answer has to come in luxury packaging. And that is why the script cannot sound too polished. It cannot sound like an ad. It cannot feel like a salesman in costume. It has to sound like someone leaning in and speaking plainly. Because plainness is persuasive when people are hungry for honesty. So let us gather the method together once more, the simple way. If your hands are dry, rough, or tight after a long day, start by preparing them. Use warm water with a little baking soda for a soak, or make a loose paste and gently rub only the rough, intact areas. No harsh pressure, no overdoing it, no scrubbing already angry skin. Rinse. Then, while the hands are still slightly warm, apply a small amount of castor oil and work it in slowly, especially over the driest places, the cracks, the thumb crease, the knuckles, the nails, and the rough parts of the palm. If you want the old overnight trick, cover the hands with cotton gloves or soft, clean cotton socks and sleep that way. If the hands feel tired and stiff, a warm cloth for a few quiet minutes can add another layer of comfort. That is the whole idea. Not complicated, not glamorous, not dramatic. But sometimes the things that endure are the things that respect the body instead of trying to impress it. And there is something else worth saying, because very few people say it aloud anymore. A pair of worn hands deserves care, not because they are beautiful in the polished magazine sense, but because they have been faithful. They have worked for you. They have lifted for you. They have made meals, held doors, washed dishes, carried burdens, wiped tears, fastened buttons, cleaned rooms, packed lunches, mended problems, and made it through hard weather. To care for them is not vanity. It is gratitude. That is a much deeper emotion than beauty, and deeper emotions travel farther. A person who hears this and feels recognized is more likely to remember the method, more likely to share it, and more likely to come back for more. That is the real force behind so-called viral advice. People do not share only because a tip is useful. They share because it expresses something they have felt but never heard spoken plainly. And this method carries a message beneath the surface. You do not have to ignore yourself until something becomes unbearable. You do not have to spend a fortune to show your body a little respect. You do not have to turn every act of care into a complicated ceremony with 10 purchase steps. Sometimes 2 simple things used in the right order can feel better than an entire shelf of promises. That idea has emotional weight. And if you want to understand why viewers stay with content like this until the end, here is the answer, hidden inside the tone. The script never insults the audience. It never makes them feel foolish. It gently suggests they were handed an incomplete idea, and now they are being let in on something quieter and wiser. People love that feeling. It preserves dignity while offering discovery. So if you are listening to this with your own hands feeling rough, or tight, or tired, do not think first about whether the trick sounds glamorous. Ask something simpler. Does it make sense to gently clean before deeply coating? Does it make sense that a thicker oil stays longer than a thinner one? Does it make sense that warmth, time, and consistency might help tired skin feel less miserable? Usually the plain answer is yes. And plain answers are often the ones that last. Now, before anyone runs too far with a story like this, let me say once again what responsible people should say. This is not a replacement for proper medical care. If you have skin that is infected, severely inflamed, bleeding badly, or reacting intensely, or if pain in the hands seems connected to something more serious than dryness and overuse, that is not the time for internet folklore. That is the time to speak with Dr. Mike Henson. But if what you need is a low-cost, simple, comforting nighttime routine for hard-used hands, then this old pairing is easy enough to try and sensible enough to remember. And perhaps that is the biggest reason it spreads. People do not only want solutions, they want solutions that feel human. Not louder, not shinier, not more complicated, just more human. There is an entire industry built on making ordinary people doubt what ordinary care can do. It teaches them to associate price with value, fragrance with effectiveness, novelty with improvement, and packaging with trust. Yet over and over again, quiet little remedies survive outside all that noise. Excitement wants to admit. A small, honest habit repeated faithfully can do more good than an expensive impulse purchase that gets abandoned after 3 days. That is true for skin. It is true for health. It is true for almost everything. So the real lesson here may not be only about baking soda and castor oil. It may be about remembering the value of modest things done well. A warm basin, a mild scrub, a thick oil, a cotton covering, a few quiet minutes, a night of rest. None of that sounds like a trend, yet together it can feel like relief. And relief is memorable. Maybe that is why people keep passing these little methods from one person to another. Not because they are magical, but because they are shareable. They belong to ordinary life. They ask almost nothing. They are easy to explain. They give a person something they can try tonight, not next month after a shopping trip. That matters in a world where many people are overwhelmed before dinner. And if you have ever ended a long day with hands that felt older than the rest of you, you already understand the appeal. You do not want a lecture. You do not want a luxury subscription. You do not want 12 steps and a drawer full of glass bottles. You want comfort. You want softness that lasts longer than an hour. You want to wake up and feel a little less scraped dry by life. That is the emotional promise hidden inside this whole idea. Not youth, not perfection, relief. Relief is one of the strongest words in the human mind. It is stronger than glamour for a tired person, stronger than trend for a practical person, stronger than hype for a disappointed person. And when a script gives someone relief before it ever gives them a product, they listen differently. That is why the best performing voiceovers in this space do not sound like demonstrations first. They sound like understanding first. So if you use this method in your own life, use it that way. Not as a stunt, not as a shocking secret, not as a miracle potion. Use it as a simple act of care. A little preparation, a little moisture, a little warmth, a little patience. That is enough to matter. And maybe tonight, instead of reaching automatically for the little bottle that smells expensive and disappears by bedtime, you reach for what is already in the cupboard and give your hands something steadier. A bit of baking soda to loosen what the day left behind. A bit of castor oil to stay where dryness has been winning. A bit of warmth, a bit of quiet, a bit of rest. No fireworks, no fantasy. Just the kind of care people used long before every problem was turned into a premium product. And some wisdom stays alive for one reason only, because when people return to it, they still find a little truth there.